So here are some of the things we just discussed about what we do when we're reading. Some ideas rereading, looking at questions first, diagrams first, pictures first, getting an idea before we actually go through the reading. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to do a demo, and we're going to be working on this demo today, tomorrow, trying to figure out what's going on. So you're going to need a fresh sheet of paper. And on this piece of paper, we're going to title it Coffee Can. Now, normally, whenever we do demos, we're going to be doing the Pod C. But you'll find out that there are times, let me remind you what these steps are. So predict, observe, discuss. I also like to put describe. And eventually we're going to come together, we're going to have little arguments in small groups, maybe arguments as a whole class. But our ultimate goal is to reach a point that makes the most sense for all of us, called the consensus. Now in this coffee can demo, and you guys saw I did this, I think, back with the candle. I said this one is not going to have a prediction. We're going to focus more on the observing, and a lot of times maybe we'll focus more on, with the observing, making sure we're asking questions. And then we're going to do some discuss and describe. And even before we discuss, we're actually going to describe by ourselves. And that's mainly going to be the focus today. All right, so really quick, since we're starting with observation, that's going to be the first part that we get to. Whoa. So if we're going to be making observations, I think it's important that we first think about what makes good observations, or what are good observation practices? What kind of things do we do when we observe things? Can you guys raise your hand and share with me? If you're going to observe things, what do you need to do to make a good observation? See what it looks like. See. Okay? Okay, use our eyes. Trey? We can touch stuff. So this is kind of going where? What are we talking about right here? What is it? Five senses. All right. So we're going to be using our five senses. We're going to be using our sense of sight, our sense of smell maybe, sense of taste, maybe not, sense of touch, sense of hearing. All right, so we use our five senses. And what else are we doing during observations? Okay, thank you. Asking questions. We might be asking questions out loud. We might just be asking questions in our head. Where did the water go out of that vase? Why didn't the water fall out the first time when you removed the card? So you're probably asking yourself questions. What else do we need to make sure we're doing? What else do we do? So picture you're doing an observation. We're actually doing science. Like I said, it's going to be today and tomorrow. Thank you. Yep, we got to write things down, which I'll say recording. Got to make sure we're recording the observation. And I'm going to put an arrow next to this because as we're making observations, that piece of paper you have right in front of you right now that you're writing on, you got to make sure you're writing things down. Now, when we record observations, what kind of things do we want to pay attention to or be careful, make sure that we're doing? Looking for changes. Good. So we're looking for changes. And we're recording. What's the purpose of recording in the first place? So we can look back at it, right? We want to be able to remember things. What things do we want to remember? We want to remember data. What kind of data do we want to be looking for from these observations? What things are important? Excellent. Beginning to end, that's talking about what? What is a beginning, an end, maybe a middle? We're talking about time. So maybe we want to think about time. Should we record time when we make observations? Might be a good idea. Might even be a good idea today to use your stopwatches on your phones or something to write down this change happened at this time. So you guys are hitting all the important points right here. Changes. We're recording data by recording what changes. We're going to record when it changes. That's important, I think. When we make observations, let's see. If I wanted to teach somebody how to get from school to my house, and I said, head northeast, would I be wrong? Oh, I live northeast of here. I'll help you out. No, it's not wrong, is it? Is it very helpful, though? It's not very descriptive. This is one thing I criticized a little bit about some of your Skittles labs. Is that you put things on there and just kind of just vaguely mention what you thought was going to happen or what happened, as opposed to trying to be descriptive. And thinking about this stuff when we make observations, we want to eventually develop some kind of testable question from it that we can do an experiment with. And a lot of times, if we don't have those details, if our explanation, if we're recording information, observations, if we're not descriptive using details, it can be harder to develop questions from it later on, or to figure out what's really going to happen, or what is really happening. Would it be a good idea maybe if we are making an observation to take pictures or video? Okay, I'm just going to list that. You're not going to be doing that, but yeah, because if you think about this, ultimately, if we wanted a really good record of something happening in today's age, you just take out your phone and record it, right? And then you've got the actual thing right there. You can always go back to that. Oh, hey, I didn't notice that time. But we're not going to do that today, just so you know. Any other things you think of that we should add? Or are we good? All right, so now we're going to go on to the actual observation. So I'll go ahead and write this down. Coffee can, observation, and then we're going to record stuff. So I'm going to be using this. So think about that. What is this? A coffee can. So I'm going to be using a coffee can. Are there any other details that we should list here that you think might be important? It's got holes in it. Thank you. The height. Okay, back to the holes real quick. I have one hole in the top, just so you know. I've got tape over it, but I'm going to take the tape off eventually. I've got one hole at the bottom at the side because I'm actually going to have this upside down. Okay, so it's towards the bottom a little bit, little lower than midway down the can. Okay, there's holes. Should we measure the height? Well, you guys don't really know what I'm doing yet, so maybe that would be important. What else? Other details you can recognize about this? The circumference. Yep, you can measure how big around it is. I'm also going to be using this thing, a lid. I'm going to be sticking that on the bottom. What other details do you notice about this setup? I just told you I'm going to have it upside down, right? Now, if you're writing all this stuff down, good, but do we necessarily need to? You don't really know exactly what we're doing. Is the color important? Orange. Could be. Don't know. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do right now. What I'm going to do is I am going to take this can, just like it is. I'm going to stick it on one of the gas jets, and I'm going to pump some methane into it. The methane is going to go in the side hole, and then I have tape on top that's keeping it in. And then what I'm going to do is light it. Okay? So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to pump methane in the side. I'm going to take the tape off the top. I'm going to light the top. Okay? Okay, so I don't want to write down stuff for observation. That's part of what you're working on. Your skills, making observations and asking questions and defining problems. But just to kind of walk through what I told you again and what we observed. So I was telling you to pay attention to detail, and I was telling you to think about what was happening um, with the coffee can, maybe in the coffee can, the flame, whatever. I pumped methane into it. We lit the top and we had a flame going, kind of a big flame that over time got smaller and smaller and smaller until it was almost gone, at which point the coffee can blew up. All right? So we're going to be making models. So I'll skip a little bit, but in here is your observation stuff. So we want to actually make a model that explains what's going on at the particle level. Okay? what's going on in this coffee can or in the flame. An explanation. This is another area I saw with the Skittles lab where you were supposed to put your explanation, you really just recorded your observation, what you saw. You didn't try to explain why the colors moved the way they did. And so that's something to think about here. We want to do an explanation of what happened scientifically. All right? So it's not supposed to be just a snapshot picture. We're actually going to divide our model up into 3 panes. Panes meaning I'm going to do some pictures, and I'm going to have 3 of them. Now understand that these models, they're not just going to be pictures. They're also going to have to include words, as in the explanation of what's going on in the picture, or labels. We want to label things. We want to make it clear that if somebody didn't know, didn't observe, actually observe this directly, we want to make it clear to them what stuff is. If I just drew a cylinder like this, am I drawing a coffee can, or am I drawing something that's like 10 stories high? Am I drawing a building that's shaped like a cylinder? I don't know. What am I drawing? So we want to do things like label, it's a coffee can. We want to be paying attention to details, so maybe we have to show that there's holes and things like that. And we want to be specific and think when we think about details, it's not just in words. Think from your average everyday eye scale down to the very, 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 very tiniest details. If you know what I'm saying. Now there's always going to be a trade-off too. Like we can add a ton of detail. I'm going to add the most detail you've ever seen in a model, Mr. Dodds. I'll get it to you in April because it's going to take forever. All right, so we're not going to get it. You got to make a judgment about what's important and what's not in terms of explaining what's going on. All right. So here are the 3 sections that you're going to be doing. Your first one is going to be explaining what's going on when the flame is burning brightly. Okay, so that's going to be your first pane. You're going to explain what's going on when the flame is burning brightly. Your next one is going to be what's going on when the flame is about to burn out. And the last one is going to be what happens when the explosion occurs. So those are going to be your 3 panes, and we are pretty much out of time, so just save that for tomorrow. Boy, that'd be a perfect opportunity to assign that as homework. All right, that's it for me.